Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining today's webinar with IGEL and Veridium. Today, we're going to be discussing better security for VDI and desktop as a service. Before we get started, I did just want to highlight to you that at the end of this session, we are going to be giving you details about how you can enter the Workspace Cool Place contest that's running this year. This gives you the chance on December the 10th to win either $5,000 worth of tech home office equipment or in fact a $20,000 home office makeover. So stay with us to the end. We've got some slides to go through, some great content and some demonstrations. And then at the end, we're going to give you the details about how to very simply enter that contest. But to kick today off, I'd like to welcome onto screen a long-term friend of mine and Chief Strategy Officer at Veridium, John Spencer.
Thank you, Simon, and thank you for having me again. And just we did I know we did the session this morning for the European folks. It's still Beauty and the Beast up there on the slide. Look, I head up strategy for Veridium. Been with the company about three and a half years. I actually ran the product group up until about early summer of this year, so I'm well versed in our technology stack. But they gave me some crayons and told me to do strategy instead, which is cool. And look, prior to this, I was CTO for Citrix in Northern Europe, so I've got a great EUC background.
Excellent, thank you, John. And for those of you that don't know me, Simon Townsend, I look after all aspects of marketing at IGEL. And much like John, I've been in the EU space deploying technologies like Citrix and VMware for, let's just say, far too long, but enjoyed every single minute of it. Myself and John just really wanted to sort of start and recap on 2020 and perhaps some of the challenges and things that we've seen over the last 6 to 9 months. Some of these have obviously been very different. Some of these are very obvious, but, I'm going to start by saying that I think that work from home is just about to die, or at least the term work from home is just about to die. And the reason I say that is that when the pandemic came around at the start of the year, everybody had to go and implement a work from home strategy. And at the time, that was very different from perhaps the strategy that people had been deploying when people were working in the office. Not for everybody, but for at least for some. What I think we do now know is that as a vaccine becomes more imminent, that some people are going to return to work, some people are going to continue to work from home, but for the majority of people, it's going to be a hybrid. And we're really working towards trying to take the place out of workplace at the moment. And whatever strategy we need to deploy around end user compute moving forwards, it's got to support the ability for someone to work anywhere, both in and out of the office. But, we've definitely seen all of the challenges associated with that, supply chain restrictions and problems with getting people equipment to work from home. How do we secure them? How do we monitor them? How do we keep them productive? All of that is now behind us, but the organizations that I'm speaking to are very much looking at how do I enable secure remote working moving forward. Brings us on to security. Security continues to be an incredibly important and top priority for CIOs and everyone within IT. Ransomware definitely hasn't disappeared. In fact, some would argue that with all of us working from home, all running systems like Windows 7, Windows 10 that continue need to be patched and supported and updated, trying to protect our users, protect our IP, protect our data is proving quite difficult. And there's even organizations that I've been speaking to recently who are really struggling with, even just basic VPN connectivity and how can we patch and update Windows endpoints along the way. And the last thing that I've definitely seen is around cloud. And I've seen it work in two ways. Number one, I've seen it enable some tremendous things. We're all sat on Zoom now. It's a cloud service. Office 365, Windows Virtual Desktop, Citrix Cloud, Horizon in the cloud. All of these cloud-delivered technologies have enabled us to deploy technology to our home workers significantly quicker. But the challenge actually is that that rate of change that the cloud goes through means that sometimes us folks in IT and therefore our employees get left behind because we're crippled by the device or the operating system that we might be using. And so keeping up with the cloud actually is starting to become more and more of a challenge. John, I don't know whether there's anything you'd like to add to anything I've said there.
No, I mean, I certainly can't, compound that, Simon. I mean, since, March when COVID kicked in, look, it was, mandated almost across the globe that, no one was traveling into offices. And that brings an additional kind of security, concern to organisations. Is whilst we as individuals come into an office and we sit in a trusted environment on a trusted network on a trusted device, as soon as you're working from home, all of a sudden the kind of three factors are out of the window. Now I'm just kind of on a broadband connection, and I'm using some untrusted device. And how do I know you are who you who you claim to be? And we've seen a massive uptick in phishing attacks since March on enterprise organizations, something like 71% uptick since March. The ransomware attacks that you mentioned, earlier on, and these kind of these issues are from a security perspective, I think are amplified even more when we're not in the office and we haven't got those security wrappers kind of around us from from an IT infrastructure perspective.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I will say, anyone that's on the webinar, if you've got any thoughts or comments that you want to make on any of that, then please use the Q&A and the chat functionality. You'll also see a gentleman that's joined us alongside myself and John, Fred Bratstick. He is our technology evangelist within IGEL. He's done a lot of work in our partnership in bringing these two technologies together. So if there's any technical questions as we go through these slides, then feel free to use the tools that are available to us on Zoom today. So as I look at it and what I've seen, I was talking to Citrix only this morning. I was on a panel with VMware just yesterday. There is no doubt about it. As I look at some of those challenges on that previous slide, how do I get people to work from home? How do I secure Windows and my applications? How do I update Windows quickly? How do I move to the cloud? VDI and desktop as a service has really helped organizations get people to work from home securely. There is no doubt about it. In fact, I would go as far to say that there were two types of organization that when work from home came along, those that had Citrix, or those that had VDI, should I say, and those that didn't. And those that had some form of VDI and desktop as a service were obviously able to enable their employees to work from home significantly easier and have got a lot less concerns and worries. However, when you are deploying VDI and desktop as a service, new questions come about and other concerns come about. And, in particular, it comes down to how do we secure our users? And how do we secure the endpoint or the edge device that we're using to access those VDI and desktop as a service environments? So, John, if I can throw it to you, what are some of those challenges that people are facing when trying to secure the user?
Yeah, look, and I think we'll all relate to this, right? And we've all been through this at some stage. Passwords are, kind of a massive problem, in the user's life. We have multiple identities in multiple different applications and services, from logging onto your endpoint in the morning to logging into your Citrix or your VMware infrastructure, maybe with an Active Directory account. You'll have a Salesforce, a Dropbox login, a G Suite, an Office 365 login, maybe a different login for your VPN. It's a huge kind of challenge, for us to kind of remember those passwords. And a lot of the calls that help desk get are password related issues, like, I've forgotten my password, I'm in a lockout, kind of situation. And each IAM platform that's hosting that identity will have some different policy associated to it, right, Simon? It's, change your password every 30 days or every 45 days or every 60 days. And your character must be 12 or 20 characters long and have alphanumeric characters in there and special characters, and each one will differ. And calls to help desk is a common factor. Like over 70% of help desk calls are password related issues for whatever reason. They're in a lockout and they've just forgotten their password. It's an expensive business as well in terms of password management. This is a Gartner number on here. $180 per user per year is a typical cost of password management within an organization. I think Microsoft said at the RSA conference the year before last, they spend $2 million every single month on password management. It's a huge cost. Right. But then, the bigger problem here, Simon, is, because the past, you and I don't want to go through that pain of resetting passwords. We try and set something that's easy to remember. And because it's easy to remember, it's inherently weak. And therefore, a lot of those kind of, almost weekly kind of news reports that we're getting around data breaches for various different organizations around the globe are typically due to compromised passwords. In fact, my ex-company Citrix, I think it's well documented now. Back in the back end of 2018, they were compromised by an Iranian organization. I received a letter from them, halfway through 2019, saying, "We're really sorry, John. We've lost all your personal data. But here's a free Equifax kind of, account, just keep kind of track on, on the integrity of your identity." So, look, it's an expensive business, and look, there needs to be, a lot of, kind of security wrappers around user authentication, and particularly, to my point earlier on, when you're working from home, is how do you know that individual is who they kind of claim to be, and that's kind of a concern for a lot of users. And Simon, from your perspective, from an endpoint management and a security perspective, where does the landscape sit for you?
It really comes down to the device that's in use. Lots of organizations, we recently did a survey with ESG, and 65% of organizations that were surveyed said that even though they were deploying desktop as a service or VDI, they still wanted a level of visibility and control over the endpoint. In fact, quite a large, over 50% of that 65% wanted the device to be a corporate managed device. So this thought of just allowing people to use any device isn't really true, right? People's IT and organizations still want to know, what is that device at the endpoint? Can I see it? Have I got visibility of it? Do I need to manage it in a particular way? Because people don't know what's running on it. Yes, I can get access to a virtualized desktop that may be hosted somewhere else in the world, but has my device been compromised? Does it have a keylogger installed on it? And so with all of these endpoints, whether they be corporate owned, whether they were choose your own devices or bring your own devices at one point, there is a feeling now that those endpoints do need to be managed, and they do need to be visible to the network, kept up to date. And the biggest challenge that we see is that now that we've taken Windows that was on all of these laptops and on all of these endpoints, and we put them into homes, how we manage Windows, how we go through migrations, how we patch them every other Tuesday is starting to cause a problem. It was hard enough patching Windows machines every 2 weeks and making sure it didn't break corporate applications, let alone having to send patches down thin bits of wire over VPN connections that just weren't built to scale. So, what do we do to ensure the integrity of that endpoint, and how do we deal with the operational cost, let alone the capital expenditure that's associated with putting Windows out at the edge? And I suppose that really sort of takes us, if you don't mind, John, takes us on to where I would introduce IGEL.
Sure.
I think a few people on this webinar will already be familiar with IGEL, and they're probably listening in to hear more about how your technology works, how it comes together. So I'll fly through this fairly quick, but for those of you that don't know, IGEL is a developer of an operating system. It is a Linux read-only operating system, and it can be installed on any x86 device. So you may be sat there thinking, well, it's an operating system. How does that work? Surely my users have got Windows or Mac OS out on their devices. You'd be exactly right. It's an operating system that replaces having Windows and or Mac on the endpoint. It is purpose-built to connect into web-based applications. So comes with a browser. We can deploy Firefox, Chromium, Chrome, whatever that might be. Gives me access to websites, access to SaaS-based applications, access to Office 365. But importantly, it also gives me access into my VDI and desktop as a service environments. And what you're seeing on the screen at the moment is just me connecting into a standard Citrix farm. My applications appear on the desktop. I can run those. That might be running on a server in Ireland. It might be running on a server on the other side of America. That is a virtualized Windows desktop environment. Doesn't matter what VDI, desktop as a service environment you've got, Citrix, VMware Horizon, Parallels, AWS with PC over IP, or in fact, as you're seeing now, native Windows Virtual Desktop support. But importantly, it's given me a secure local operating system. It's easy to manage, and then access to Windows. And what you're actually seeing finally at the moment is me running a local Linux version of both Teams and Zoom, so that if I do want to empower people to have unified communications outside of my VDI desktop as a service environment, I can do as well. But more on that later as we do a demo. You know, it's 3 words there. It says simple, smart, secure. Why does it say that? Well, as you can see, it's very simple to use, but it's incredibly simple to manage. You're talking one person can manage tens of thousands of these machines. It requires significantly less operational cost and time than having to manage a Windows-based desktop environment. It's very smart because it can be installed on any x86 64-bit device, which means if you've got old kit that's currently running Windows 7 or kit that's running Windows 10 that's starting to slow down, or perhaps devices that you don't currently manage, you can choose to run that IGEL operating system on an existing device. And it means that we actually lengthen the life of an endpoint in many, many cases. I've got hundreds of stories this year where people have taken 3-year-old kit that was just about to go into a skip off to be recycled. And in fact, we've pulled that back, we've put IGEL on it, and we've extended the life of that. Because what we're doing is putting a very performant operating system that's feature rich onto an endpoint that perhaps wasn't designed to do so. Likewise, that smart investment applies to existing thin clients as well. So if you've got Dell, HP thin clients, you can put that OS on there as well. And lastly, as I said, very, very secure. This operating system is read-only. Nothing can be introduced to it. You can't put in a USB key and introduce anything. You can't download anything and write to memory. Therefore, it is regarded as an incredibly secure solution, both on the endpoint and the connection, as you'll see in a second, up to the management. So architecturally, what does it look like for a typical customer? I take my new or existing endpoints, and we'll come on to that in a second, and I run the IGEL operating system, and I can connect, as I said, to web-based applications or any of these cloud-delivered workspaces. All of that can be managed securely via a cloud gateway device, and all of the management is done from a central location, drag and drop, applying policies, changing settings through what we call the UMS, the management platform that we have. What's important to IGEL and important to Veridium and over 100 other technology partners is our IGEL Ready program. To allow an operating system to be installed on an endpoint and for us to provide functionality, but also give our customers a level of confidence that these technologies work together, we created what's known as the IGEL Ready program. This allows us to do joint testing, joint marketing activities, and also go to market with our partners in this space, because no one solution is a silver bullet, and it's incredibly important when you're deploying end user compute that all of your existing technologies that you might be using in this space continue to work and work to the best of their ability. That's why Veridium is featured as an IGEL Ready partner, but it doesn't matter whether you're using something like ControlUp, Liquidware Lakeside for analytics, whether you're using Print with all of these people, and in many of these cases include their agents and their technologies in our operating system so that things just work out of the box. So how do I get this IGEL operating system out to our devices? Well, it can be downloaded as an ISO, it can be deployed out via something like SCCM or some modern management tool like Workspace ONE. It's very easy to deploy it out, and you can choose when those devices will convert into IGEL devices. If you do it that way, what you're doing is you're sending down the operating system reformatting the device, and then allowing that device forever to boot up into the IGEL OS. Alternatively, you can deploy one of these things that I'm showing to the camera about now, which is a small thumbnail USB drive. This is called the UD Pocket. This allows you to run the IGEL operating system live off a USB key. Very useful for disaster recovery, very useful over the last 6 months in helping organizations who've been attacked with ransomware or might want to run the IGEL operating system on a BYOD type of device. And lastly, you can get the operating system on some hardware that we manufacture. These are thin client devices, very green, very efficient. And if you've ever been involved in VDI or desktop as a service, you'll know all about what a thin client is. But the key point here is the same operating system that's running on that device is the same operating system that we would deploy down to any other device or onto that USB key. Last one from me really sort of summarizes how this has been working for all of our customers most recently. And I'll give you an example of an insurance company we've been working with closely. They were an IGEL customer already. They actually had an on-prem instance of their management console. They were able to manage around 3,500 machines. IGEL OS was running on all sorts, IBM, Lenovo devices, Dell thin clients, and IGEL hardware. The moment everybody had to go and work from home, what they had to do was deploy something called the IGEL Cloud Gateway that went into their DMZ. That allowed them to have secure access to that management server and immediately meant that they were able to do a couple of things. First of all, they gave some employees a UD Pocket and they took that home and plugged it into their home device. For others, they actually went to a pile of PCs and laptops that were due to be recycled and actually brought them out and installed IGEL on them. And for the remainder of the users, and this was the majority of them, they looked into the office that was currently empty because everyone was working from home. They took every single one of their PCs that wasn't running IGEL, that was running Windows, and deployed IGEL out via SCCM, boxed all of those devices up, put them in a box, went down into the car park, and one at a time, employees would drive into the car park, pop their boot, someone with a mask on would lift a box in, and they would take what they called Office in a Box Home, which was a device running IGEL with a keyboard, mouse, the whole lot, and then they have secure access back into their Citrix environment, all being centrally managed by the IGEL management platform. Very, very simple. So, John, let me hand over to you. I've done far too much talking, sorry.
No, thank you, Simon. It appears I've lost mouse control, so I'll give you a secret signal when I need the slide to move forward. So, look, what do we do at Veridium? We deliver modern authentication, and we deliver modern authentication without compromise. What is modern authentication? I hear you scream. Well, modern authentication is actually a Gartner terminology, and in essence, and in short, it means passwordless. Means the ability now to gain access to kind of systems and applications without a password. And actually, by taking the password out of your IT environment, I can actually increase security for your organization, because you can't share credentials if you don't have a password. I can't do a brute force attack on you like my old company we were exposed to. I can't send phishing emails. I can send phishing emails to you, but they're worthless because when you click on the link, and typically they ask you to put your username and your password in, you don't have a password to type in. Keyloggers, right? Zero value in a passwordless environment. But typically, Simon, obviously, when you make things more secure, you do that at the detriment of user experience. So the one thing that we've been, very focused on as a security organization is to bring, world-class security to our customers, but not do that at the expense of user experience. We want to ensure that the user experience is is as seamless and as frictionless as possible for everyone in the organization. And look, and I touched on this earlier on. Like, passwords are a massive frustration for us as users. Forgotten passwords, lockout situations. It's a call to the help desk. Which identity do I use for which application and services? What identity do I use to log onto Windows? Which one for my VPN? Which one for my Office 365? My Dropbox? My Zoom account? Which one for my G Suite account, whatever it may be, it's a challenge. And look, irrespective of, I know this is a Citrix screenshot that I've taken here, whatever Apple service that you're, kind of logging into, this is, familiar, kind of experience. And, and this is in the office. But when we're out of the office, it's, often a different experience altogether, because now we want to bring strong authentication or two-factor authentication, and that's traditionally been technology such as Secure ID or Vasco, Gemalto, Duo kind of do this. It comes in many different flavors. You get a physical key fob. You can get a soft token on your mobile phone. You can receive an SMS. You can receive a phone call with an automated voice on there. But the idea with two-factor authentication, the two factors are the key fob or the application or the phone call that you receive, and then you have a secret, and it's a PIN that you enroll as part of your registration process. And that now means that I can bring two-factor authentication, and this is also mandated by some of the the regulators around the world. If you're in New York and in a financial organization, NYDFS dictates you have to have 2FA enabled on within the organization. Similar with CCPA in California. We're seeing this in European markets as well now. But look, I think the point here, Simon, is that token is cumbersome. Right, we've all been there, and just as you type in the number in, it loops around. It's a complement to the password, and my point here is, if you don't know what your password is, the token is of zero value to you, right? And it's an expensive piece of kit, to move around. My old company was spending just short of $200 per user per year on Symantec, kind of VIP. And then you've got the logistical challenges of moving physical tokens, kind of around the globe. If you lose your RSA token, you're an employee that lives in Hong Kong, you've got to go to the police station. You've got to report it, kind of lost and stolen before your company can issue you a new token. So look, it's complex, it's cumbersome, but it's also expensive, right? So we at Veridium kind of wanted to take this approach to say, well, look, it doesn't matter whether you're in the office, it doesn't matter if you're at home, it doesn't matter wherever you are in the world. We want to deliver this one consistent, seamless user experience. And we want to continue to deliver strong authentication, because that's kind of almost mandated by organizations, certainly for external access and certainly by the regulators. So what's the first thing we can do is I can take that token technology out of the equation. I can reduce your operational costs by taking that physical hardware or soft token away, and actually I improve the user experience significantly as well. What can I also do now with a passwordless security? And the one thing I'd love you to remember from today, all right, is that we're password free. You never have to type a password, but actually we're passwordless. And I know there's a nuance here, but passwordless means there is genuinely no password. Password-free solutions, often you have a password vault. You don't have to type a password in, but it goes to the vault. It pulls out the appropriate password and then replays it. The Veridium solution is 100% passwordless capability. There's no password. You cannot be compromised through a misuse or a brute force attack of passwords. And then look, what typically happens is people say, well, great, John, you take away my token, right? You take away the password, you give me this phenomenal user experience, but to your point earlier, I've now got multiple different identities. Which identity do I use to log into to which application and service? So we've simplified the user experience even further. And all you have to do now is actually scan a QR code that's on your mobile phone screen and authenticate yourself with who you are, rather than what you know. So how do we do this at Veridium? Look, we've taken the one common device that we're all very familiar with. It's the first device I put down in the morning, the last device I put down, on a night, whether it's an Apple phone, whether it's an Android phone. What's interesting on this strong authentication of the two factors is I've now got a device, whether it's a BYO device or a corporately supplied device. I've got a possession of something that I can start to use. How do we as users unlock that device today to get into the phone and then into our mobile application stack? Look, we use our fingerprint or our face. It's become a very neat and very convenient and a pretty secure way of gaining access not only to the phone, but I don't have to put a PIN or a password in to my mobile application stack. So we thought there's another factor here. Now you've got a biometric, a fingerprint or a face, coupled with the phone, the possession factor. So I now bring strong authentication by definition. I have two factors. So what do we do at Veridium? We say, well, why don't we take your identity from those existing IAM platforms that you have today, your Active Directory, your Azure Active Directory, your Oktas, your Pings, your ForgeRocks, any of those IAM services that you use today, and bind your digital identity to the mobile phone, so you can use your mobile phone to do identity assertion. You can start to use that to authenticate your session. Well, how do I know it's your phone? Well, we use a biometric that's enrolled on your phone, your Face ID, your Touch ID, to unlock your digital identity. What that then does is it provides modern, passwordless, strong authentication because it's multiple factors. It's behavior aware. We'll come on to that in a second. I can start to take things like location awareness. I mean, if you're a Swiss customer today in finance, the FINMA regulator dictate that they have to know exactly where you are in the world to enable you to perform certain operations. Now, how do I know where you are in the world? I can't take your IP address because that's easily spoofed with VPN, but I could take the GPS location of your phone. So we can start to bring contextual awareness and intelligence, smart, to kind of mirror, Simon's language earlier on, authentication into your environment. And this will work for pretty much any application or service that challenges you for a username or password today, whether it's a SaaS application, whether it's a local native application on your device, whether it's a virtual application, whether it's a legacy application, mobile application, doesn't really matter. It's an omni-channel approach that we've taken. However, there's a flaw, and I'm sure a lot of you are kind of on the end of this webinar now are going, well, John, touching my phone doesn't prove identity, right? Now it might say that my fingerprint is enrolled on my wife's phone, or my face is enrolled on my wife's phone. Either one of us now can unlock it. Either one of us can get into the mobile application stack, and therefore, by definition, any one of us can get into the Veridium protected resources. So what have we done at Veridium is we've added another layer in. And it's a behavioral layer. And this is an additional level of security to the authentication to bring that smart authentication to your environment. So now if, Mrs. Townsend is being malicious with Simon's phone, she picks up Simon's phone, her face is enrolled on the phone. The Veridium behavioral layer, which is an artificial intelligence layer, looks at the telemetry data of the mobile phone, says, doesn't feel like Simon. Simon comes along, picks up the same phone, different face, but a valid Face ID on the phone. Our behavioral layer will say it's a good authentication. It feels like Simon on the end of that device. And this is how we can start to bring relevance to native biometric sensors such as Touch ID and Face ID. What does it look like architecturally? Well, look, there's a platform. Right, and that platform lives in your data center. It's in the customer data center. It's not hosted by Veridium. It's not hosted by IGEL. It can also live as part of your cloud-first strategy. We have this in Amazon Marketplace. We'll have this in Azure Marketplace in the coming weeks as well. So you can spin this up in your own cloud, in your own private cloud instance. Now, it's a Citrix-ready platform. We've got some unique integrations with the Citrix ecosystem. As you would expect, it's an IGEL-ready platform as well. It's a FIDO 2.0 certified platform. How do I interface with that platform? How do I communicate with it? Well, I have a mobile phone, as I talked about earlier on, and there's an application that needs to live on that mobile phone to initiate the authentication attempt to communicate with the server. Where does that app come from? It comes from the App Store or the Play Store, but also we have a software development kit to allow organizations to wrap the Veridium capability into their own in-house applications. And then this is when the magic of the platform really starts to come in. We've created this open integration. It means any of the applications and services that you want to connect to, it's a very simple configuration change if the applications support any of these standard authentication protocols today. Web applications typically support SAML, VPN devices typically support Radius, some of them support SAML today, but there's things like OAuth and OpenID Connect, there's a FIDO WebAuthn protocol, and for those applications that don't support any of that, we've also got an API stack to allow you to do custom integration. But the point here is simple configuration change in your Office 365 environment allows you to provide passwordless strong authentication with Veridium. Simple configuration change on your Citrix NetScaler or your Storefront environment or your Citrix Cloud or your Salesforce or your Dropbox environment provides protection with the Veridium architecture to deliver that passwordless strong authentication. Now, what happens now, on the server itself, we have this artificial intelligence layer that brings enhanced security to the authentication. It starts to bring that smart intelligence into authentication. This is a machine learning artificial intelligence layer that looks at the user's behavior. And then finally, what I normally get is I get, John, this sounds brilliant, and the user experience looks phenomenal, and Simon will show you this in a few seconds. But you know what? I don't have a mobile phone. I'm not permitted to use a mobile phone on a trading floor in a bank, or if you're in government, you might be prohibited from using a mobile phone. So we give you flexibility. We allow you to choose the right authenticator for the right use case. If you want to use, I don't know, something like Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator and deliver passwordless authentication into any of those environments, we can enable that. You want to use a FIDO token, a YubiKey type device, yes, we can enable that, as well. If you've got a non-smartphone, I can still deliver that SMS type capability, but deliver that as a passwordless approach. So, we have the edge cases. It's often the 20% of the employees which are the most difficult and often the most expensive to deliver solutions for. We wanted to make sure this platform was an open and flexible platform to meet customer requirements.
Yeah. John, sorry to interrupt.
No,
someone's asked about NetMotion VPN. Do you know whether you guys can?
I don't know. I hate saying yes at this point, but if that NetMotion VPN supports the Radius protocol, and I'm 99.9% sure it will, or it supports SAML, so there's a configuration for either Radius or SAML, then it will work against the Veridium architecture today. So yes, I think the answer is yes. I'm not 100% familiar, but if the person who asked the question searches on NetMotion and Radius and finds a thumbs up on that protocol, then yes, we will work.
Got it.
Look, Veridium, IGEL, as a combination, and Simon will show this in a second, it's a super simple solution to use from a user experience perspective. We know it's smart. Simon touched on the fact it's smart because it kind of works in any device, in any environment, in anywhere. We're smart because we can start to bring intelligence into the authentication attempt. And look, this is secure. We delivered this, at scale in some very complex, organizations in global tier one banks, in kind of global, insurance companies, in government organizations. I've been hauled over the coals when I ran the product group in terms of, the penetration testing that went on there. So, I tick the boxes for world-class security. So Simon, let me shut up at this point. Why don't you kind of bring this to life from an IGEL Veridium perspective and show the audience what this could look like?
Yeah, no, sure. So hopefully you can see my desktop. John,
I can, Simon. Yes.
Excellent. Good. Left-hand side of the screen, what you're looking at is an IGEL OS running on a virtual machine. I'm not sadly eating my own dog food today for the purpose of these demos, but what you can see is that I've got a VM running IGEL OS, and it's got a whole host of different shortcuts on the desktop. On the right-hand side of the screen, what you can see is my mobile phone. So that is my mobile phone that I'm scrolling through now, and hopefully we'll just check that, yes, I do have it on silent or do not disturb. So what I'd like to do is, first of all, is just run you through the left-hand side, familiarize yourself with the IGEL OS. You can see here I've got a start menu. This would be running on a MacBook, a Lenovo laptop, a Dell Thin client, any 86, 64-bit environment, either off the hard disk or, remember, off that USB key. This has been configured by a central administrator using a management platform I'm going to show you in a second. We create policies, we deploy them out to users and devices, and we can change what this environment looks like. So at the moment, I've got a nice mustardy yellow wallpaper. You can see I've got access to date and time, Wi-Fi information. If I want to, I can quite easily go into Google Chrome. I could decide to go and launch, Office 365, read the news, or in this particular case, I could try and use the web browser to access a Citrix environment. So very similar to what John was showing in his slides earlier. The downside is, guess what, today, I don't know what my username is, and I've forgotten it. So there is one environment that I'm trying to connect to that requires username, password, and a token. Very standard stuff when you look at it without the Veridium solution, as John said. Likewise, in this particular case, I've got a connection. I've got the Citrix Workspace app, latest version included with the latest version of the IGEL OS. This supports HDX, it supports Teams offloading, for instance. As I try and connect to that environment, again, the connection's been set up. It knows where to connect to, but in this particular case, it's asking me for a username and a password, which, funnily enough, I do remember my password for this one, but we're going to pretend in this particular case that I don't, or that I don't want to have to put my username and password in to that type of environment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the policy that is set on this device. So as I bring my management server over, this is an IGEL management server. I've got some profiles configured there. You can see I've got profiles that set up my Citrix connections, profiles that set up connections to Windows Virtual Desktop, etc. I'm literally just going to drag this machine here, which is my IGEL VM. It's green because it's online. I'm going to drag it from one group into another group. I'm going to drag it into the group called Veridium machines. And it's going to say, do you really want to move this device? I'm going to say yes. And that immediately means that I am now going to send a new policy down to that device. And if you see on the screen now, the user gets alerted. We could have done it at reboot. We decided to do it in real time. We've now just communicated from the management platform down to the device. Do I want to accept these new changes? Yes, I do. It's a new configuration. For the purpose of this demo, we're going to change the wallpaper from mustard to Veridium blue. And I've also changed my Veridium connection. And this time, what happens is I'm now just pointing at a different Citrix environment that has been configured with the Veridium solution. Now, from an IGEL point of view, and for any of you that are going through any form of Citrix upgrade, Citrix migration, if you're moving from one VDI vendor to another, if you're evaluating WVD, or you're moving from on-prem to Citrix Cloud as an example, the way in which I can reconfigure an endpoint that could be tens and thousands of miles away is incredibly powerful. By dragging and dropping that machine, I've literally just reconfigured that Citrix client to say, right, you were pointing at a server in Germany, you're now pointing at the Veridium server, which, John, I don't know, where's your particular Citrix server, do you know?
It's in AWS, actually. It's in AWS. So Munich, I think, is actually.
There we go. Who knows, right? So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to connect into the Citrix environment, and I'm going to get presented with a code. And very simply, I'm going to go into my phone. You can see me moving around my phone here. I am going to go into the Veridium app. Here I've got myself registered, so I've been enrolled as a user. That means that this phone, John, correct me where I go wrong here, but this phone and me are now enrolled. It's going to use something that I have. It's going to use also my authentication on the phone, aka my face. And all I've got to do is take my phone and choose to scan that code. So now what you can see my messy office, but you can see very quickly there, if I scan the code, look at the phone, I've now got authentication successful, and immediately that's communicated with the Citrix environment that was running in Munich on AWS. and it has now allowed me in. And in this particular case, we've configured the IGEL operating system to say, do you know what? Once you're authenticated, I want you to boot up into Windows 10 desktop. And now you can see that within the space of seconds, I'm now logged into that desktop. In fact, I'm that impressed with it, I may well do it again because it is that quickly. But the point being here is I haven't had to remember a username. I haven't had to remember a password. I very, very simply just used my phone to authenticate there. Likewise, you could do exactly the same type of thing with a standard RDP connection. So this time we're not using Citrix. Again, I can sort of come in. You can see me on my phone here. It's trying to scan the code. If I point it at the code, it will process that. And oh, it wants my Face ID. It then takes my Face ID, and I'm then in, and I'm now running a virtual desktop using the RDP protocol as opposed to ICA with Citrix. Very, very simple. John, anything to add on anything that I've shown there? Hopefully I've done that justice.
Beautifully demonstrated. I'm going to take you everywhere with me from now on to say video in that job. Look, I mean, you've shown 2 use cases there, logging into, kind of Citrix workspace, doing an RDP connection. This would work with, VPN client, it would work with your Zoom client, it would work with your Teams client, your Office 365, your Skype for Business. It doesn't matter what the application is. It's that one consistent user experience for user authentication. You can also create a single sign-on type kind of scenario, as well. So thank you for a beautiful demonstration.
No. I mean, I just the way I look at it, it amazes me that we've not implemented technology like this sooner in our working lives. I can quite happily go and spend £200-300 on Amazon, and literally it needs my fingerprint or my Face ID to authorize it. Now I can walk into a supermarket and I can pay with my phone and my face. Again, I think in the UK at least, we're up to £100 we're allowed to spend on that. I can log in and I can manage my bank account, which doesn't happen to have a great deal of money in it at any one time. But the point is it is very, very simple and very secure in my own personal world. And yet for so many organizations, when I try and log on to my corporate workspace, which is typically a Windows machine, I've then got to remember, what is Control-Alt-Delete, what's my username and what's my password. And not only that, remember it for multiple applications and multiple reasons, which, makes me
You're not alone in that challenge, Simon, that's for sure.
No. So, John, final thoughts?
I'm very conscious of time here. We deliver, world-class, security to our customers. Look, we do this. It's better, it's cheaper, it's more secure. Really, is the underlying message here. It's better because it's more secure. It's better because it's a better user experience. By taking out tokens and taking out passwords out of the organization, we can actually reduce the operational costs. We get phenomenal ROI with our customers, typically kind of in year. And if you are working in a regulated industry, we can help tick those some of those boxes that the regulator are mandated.
Perfect. John, do you know whether it does include CJIS requirements?
Criminal justice, I think that is, Simon. Look, we've had a lot of engagement in US government. I'd have to go double check that CJIS and see where we're up to with that, rather than give a glib, kind of yes comment on that. I'm not one for saying yes when it's a maybe.
Yeah, Mike that asked that, we'll make sure we come back to you. Thanks for your continued questions. Good stuff. Final thoughts from me on the IGEL side of things. Keep it simple, right? It's very simple, which is if you're deploying Windows from the cloud or from a virtualized environment, it's probably using single image management. It's significantly easier to patch every 2 weeks. It's significantly easier to update Windows 10 every 6 months. You can put all the security agents and controls that you want around that. But whatever you do, take Windows away from the edge if you're going to do that, because otherwise you're having to manage Windows up in the cloud and manage Windows at the endpoint. So change the security posture or improve the security posture by changing what you're deploying down at the edge, I think, is probably the message I'd like people to take away. And, you know, when it comes to saving money, saving time, you know, you don't need to rip and replace hardware at the endpoint just because you're going to be changing what's going on the back end or up in the cloud. And obviously, you've seen today, very, very simple to use. You've seen me move some things around, very, very simple to manage. You know, for lots and lots of organizations, it's a, dare I say, a bit of a set and a forget technology. But, you know, you start to bring in the support for all those other technologies, including Veridium, and you can really start to see how you can change user experience and yet secure the endpoint. So, more information from an IGEL point of view, feel free to head over to any of our security pages that are on our website. If you want to evaluate it, you can go to igel.com/download, get a 90-day free evaluation. John, what about people?
Yeah, and also from our perspective, you know, if you go to veridiumid.com, there's a request a demo button, I think pretty much all over the page, I think top right corner specifically. You know, look, we can stand up, you know, in our demonstration environment, actually the same one that Simon's been using today. We can create you an account. You can start to, you know, kind of feel this for yourselves. We've got some Windows infrastructure in there, some Citrix, some SaaS applications. You start to get, you know, kind of, you know, a feel and a flavor for what this potentially could look like within the organization. So just go to that site, click on request a demo, and you know, we'll follow up with you.
Perfect. All right. John, thank you very much. Before we leave, I did promise that I would share the details of how people can win our contest. Anybody that's on this webinar, you can go to workspacecoolplace.com. You can read all about how to improve your home office environment. We've had a lady called Vicky Norris working with us for the last 12 months. She's been given regular videos, tips and blogs on how to organize your life. If you look around my office here, you'll be able to tell that I haven't listened to her much. It's a bit of a mess. But if you'd like to go to that website, workspacecoolplace.com, you can fill out some details. You'll be asked for a code. Put the words secure VDI in as your code. That means we know it's you. We know you came to this webinar. We'll ask you some questions, then we'll put you in the draw. And on the 10th of December, one person in America and one person in EMEA is going to win $5,000 worth of tech each. And we will also then be drawing the winner of the $20,000 home office makeover. We've already given one of these away. The gentleman that won has already had the designer remotely reconfigure things. And hopefully, if we can do it, we will be going into there in the new year to actually help redesign, re-architect and decorate that person's office and fill it full of loads of great kit. So yeah, thanks very much for everybody that's joined this webinar. If I just stop sharing my screen, you'll probably see the three of us rather large on big screens. But from everybody at IGEL, thanks very much to all of those that attended and for those of you listening. And also, John, thank you. Pleasure as always.
Pleasure. Thank you, Simon. Much appreciated.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Speak soon.